Imagine rheumatoid arthritis for a second. Like if you were to just picture it in your head, you're probably picturing hands, right?
Oh, absolutely. Swollen knuckles.
Yeah, painful, really stiff joints. It's this incredibly visible physical ailment that we basically associate with a mechanical breakdown of the body's hinges.
Right. The wear and tear, the cartilage.
Exactly. But what if the origins of that joint pain and, the ongoing battlegrounds of this disease, what if they aren't in the joints at all?
Which is a wild thought.
Right. What if they lie somewhere entirely unexpected, specifically the mucosal surfaces of the body, like the vaginal tract?
Yeah, and we are looking at a complete paradigm shift here in how we understand chronic systemic inflammation.
A total shift.
Right. The traditional view of rheumatoid arthritis as strictly this joint disorder, it's being fundamentally challenged by the very cutting edge of autoimmune research right now.
So welcome to this deep dive. Today we are unpacking a really heavy stack of sources.
Oh, there's so much good stuff in here.
There really is. We've got a groundbreaking cross-sectional study from microbiology spectrum, some incredibly detailed research on mucosal immunology, and clinical insights on conditions like Sjögren's syndrome and inflammatory vaginitis.
It's a lot to get through, but it paints such a clear picture.
It does. And our mission today is to explore how chronic systemic inflammation from rheumatoid arthritis alters the vaginal microenvironment.
Right, because we're talking about fundamental changes to the bacterial and immune landscape.
Exactly. And what this actually means for treating you as a whole patient, not just a set of isolated symptoms. So where do we even start with this?
Well, I think to figure out why a disease that is, famous for destroying cartilage is suddenly showing up in the reproductive tract, we have to fundamentally rethink what rheumatoid arthritis, or RA, actually is.
Okay, lay it on me.
So the research strongly points to RA being a systemic mucosal issue long, long before it ever becomes a joint issue.
Wait, really? Long before? Yeah. According to a Nature Reviews rheumatology paper in our sources, patients often develop autoantibodies, and these are the immune system proteins that mistakenly attack the body, right?
Right, the friendly fire.
Exactly. They develop these autoantibodies long before any joint symptoms actually appear.
Wow. So they call us the pre-RA state, right?
Yes, the pre-RA state.
Where they can literally detect these destructive proteins in your blood years before you ever complain about a stiff knee or a sore knuckle.
Years. It's really incredible.
So, if the joints are perfectly fine during this pre-RO state, the misfiring has to be starting somewhere else entirely.
And the primary suspects are our mucosal tissues.
The linings.
Yeah, the thin, moist linings of our internal surfaces. So we're talking the lungs, the gut, the gums, and of course the reproductive tract.
Which is just a massive amount of surface area if you unfold it all.
Oh, it's huge. And they act as the body's borders, right?
Yeah.
Separating our completely sterile internal organs from the outside world.
From an evolutionary perspective, your immune system doesn't waste its primary resources guarding the sterile stuff inside.
Because there's no threat there.
Exactly. It puts the heavy artillery right at the borders because that's where the threat is. These tissues are just constantly interacting with trillions of microbes every single day.
So basically, the joints are just the final victims here. But the criminals of autoimmunity are actually breaking in through the body's mucosal borders.
That is a perfect way to put it. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why a tiny, localized skirmish between the immune system and the microbes at a border can so easily escalate into systemic warfare.
It's like a border dispute starting a world war.
Exactly. And we see the systemic nature in other autoimmune conditions, too. Like, our sources mention Sjögren's syndrome.
Right, which most people just know is that disease that causes, severely dry eyes and a dry mouth.
Yeah, but Sjögren's actually involves a process called lymphocytic vasculitis.
Which means what exactly?
It means immune cells are infiltrating the blood vessels themselves, which then reduces the vascular supply to mucosal tissues all over the entire body.
Oh, wow. So it's not just shutting down saliva or tear ducts?
No, not at all.
It's an autoimmune attack on the blood vessels that maintain those delicate tissues everywhere, which I guess totally explains why it causes severe vaginal dryness as well.
Right, because autoimmunity doesn't just stay in its lane.
It's everywhere.
It creates this collateral damage across the entire mucosal network. And because these mucosal borders are deeply defined by the microbial communities that live on them, the microbiome, any systemic alarm is going to physically change that local ecosystem.
Like the chronic inflammation of RA, for instance.
Exactly.
So if these mucosal borders are essentially defined by the microbes that live on them, how does a systemic alarm like RA physically change the actual bacteria living in the vaginal tract?
Well, we have to establish what a healthy baseline looks like down there first, because the vaginal tract operates under very, very different biological rules than the rest of the body.
Okay, how so?
A healthy vaginal environment is ideally a low-diversity environment.
Low diversity.
Yeah, it should essentially be a monoculture, heavily dominated by just one specific type of bacteria, which is lactobacillus.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second.
Yeah.
Because usually, like when we talk about the gut microbiome, we're told diversity is the ultimate goal.
Right. Eat the rainbow, get lots of different strains.
Exactly. You want this lush, thriving rainforest of different microbes in your stomach. So are you saying that in this specific microenvironment, microbial diversity is actually a massive red flag?
Yes. It is a complete inversion of the gut rule. The vaginal tract requires strict, low-diversity order to remain healthy.
That is so counterintuitive.
It is, but those lactobacilli are the peacekeepers,
Oh.
specifically species like Lactobacillus crispus or Lactobacillus gasseri.
Okay, so how do they keep the peace?
Well, the vaginal epithelial cells naturally shed a type of sugar called glycogen. The lactobacilli eat that glycogen, they ferment it, and they produce lactic acid as a byproduct.
Which drops the pH.
Dramatically. It keeps the environment very low, very acidic, and that acidity acts as this robust chemical shield that physically inhibits the growth of any invading pathogens.
Wow, so they're actively terraforming their own environment to keep invaders out.
Exactly.
But when we look at that microbiology spectrum study on women with rheumatoid arthritis, that peacekeeper dynamic is just completely gone.
Licked out.
Yeah, the researchers found that women with RA have a significantly altered vaginal microbiome characterized by much higher alpha diversity.
The richness and variety of different bacterial species were just elevated across the board.
So the rainforest basically took over. And in the vaginal tract, that signals a collapsed ecosystem.
Right. The study found these elevated levels of rare, non-optimal bacteria, things with the names like Peptinophilus, Finagoldia, and Pravitella.
Those sound like bad news.
They are. These are largely anaerobic bacteria, meaning they thrive in environments without oxygen. And because they don't process sugars the same way lactobacilli do, they do not produce that protective lactic acid shield.
So if the lactic acid shield is gone, the environment is just defenseless.
Completely.
But are these new diverse bacteria just like squatters taking up space, or are they actively sabotaging the tissue?
Oh, they are actively changing the chemical makeup of the environment. Pravotella is a particularly interesting character here because it is a known instigator of inflammation across other mucosal sites.
Like in the gut, right?
Yes, especially in the gut of RA patients. So when you have this huge influx of diverse anaerobic bacteria, they produce inflammatory metabolites instead of lactic acid.
What kind of metabolites?
Things like biogenic amines and short-chain fatty acids. And in this specific delicate tissue, these substances act as chemical irritants. They are directly aggravating the mucosal lining.
Okay, so if those chemical irritants are constantly aggravating the delicate tissue, that has to provoke an immune response. I mean, the body isn't just going to ignore a localized chemical burn.
No, it doesn't. The body responds by treating the area like a localized war zone, which is where we start seeing a localized cytokine storm.
Cytokines, right. Those are essentially molecular distress signals.
Yeah, they're proteins secreted by immune cells to coordinate a response to a threat. And the primary study ran this massive 48-plex cytokine analysis on these vaginal samples.
And what did they find?
The RA vaginal sample showed significantly higher levels of specific inflammatory cytokines compared to healthy controls.
Yeah, and one of the heavyweights they found elevated was tumor necrosis factor, or TNF.
A major player in inflammation.
Big time. And to understand what a massive inflammatory signal like TNF is doing down there, we can look at another source in our stack. It was a PLOS study looking at HIV-1 exposure, actually.
Right, because that study perfectly illustrates the physical mechanism of barrier breakdown.
Exactly. So can you walk us through what that lining looks like normally?
Sure. The mucosal lining is made of epithelial cells that are zipped tightly together by structural proteins. Literally, they're called tight junctions.
Right, junctions. Got it.
But TNF-alpha acts like a solvent on those microscopic zippers. It disrupts the tight junctions, causing the cells to literally pull apart slightly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so the barrier loses its structural integrity and develops what we call leakiness.
So the barrier literally becomes porous, which means it allows those invasive microbes and their chemical toxins to just slip right through the cracks into the deeper, highly vascularized tissue.
Yeah, They get right into the blood supply.
I'd imagine that just completely throws fuel on the inflammatory fire.
It creates this vicious self-sustaining cycle. The diverse microbes trigger the release of TNF. The TNF dissolves the tight junctions. More microbes slip through the leaky barrier, which triggers the immune system to release even more TNF.
It's a runaway train.
Exactly. And this ties into a crucial concept mentioned in our sources regarding vulvovaginal candidiasis, which most people know as yeast infections.
Right.
It's called the immunopathology paradigm.
Okay, meaning that the actual disease and the tissue damage isn't coming from the yeast infection itself. It's coming from our own hyperinflammatory reaction to it.
Exactly. The severe symptoms, the burning, the pain, the actual tissue damage, they often don't come directly from the invading microbes.
That is so wild.
Because when that barrier becomes leaky, you get a massive influx of neutrophils, which are your immune system's frontline white blood cells.
The first responders.
Right. They rush to the site to clear the infection, but in this chaotic, dysbiotic environment surrounded by all the wrong bacteria and all these chaotic inflammatory signals, they become functionally impaired.
They lose their minds.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
They fail to actually clear the microbial threat, but they still release all their destructive pathogen-killing enzymes directly into your own tissue.
It sounds like our own immune system is overreacting, essentially blowing up the bridge it's supposed to be protecting.
What's fascinating here is that the body actually tries to repair the bridge at the exact same time it's blowing it up.
Wait, how does it do that?
We see this in another elevated marker found in the study, which is epidermal growth factor, or EGF. Normally, EGF promotes tissue regeneration. It's supposed to signal the vaginal epithelial cells to multiply and heal the damage.
Oh, that sounds like a good thing.
Usually it is, but in the context of rheumatoid arthritis, EGF has a paradoxical, really dark side.
Uh-oh.
In the synovial joints of RA patients, EGF actually drives the problematic, destructive proliferation of cells. It causes the joint lining to overgrow into this massive tissue that literally erodes the bone.
Wow. So seeing elevated EGF in the vaginal tract of RA patients leaves us with a terrifying question. Like, is it just trying to heal the leaky barrier, or is it driving a destructive RA-like pathology right there in the mucosal tissue?
And honestly, the presence of that much inflammation and rapid cell turnover sets a very, very dangerous stage.
So if this barrier is completely broken down, it's flooded with inflammatory signals, and it's crawling with confused immune cells,
Yeah.
how does that localized chaos actually create the weapons that eventually attack the joints? Because we really need to talk about the autoantibody mystery here.
We do. So in rheumatology, diagnosing RA relies heavily on finding two main biomarkers in the blood:
Right.
anti-citrullinated protein antibodies, known as ACPA, and rheumatoid factor, or RF.
And these are the specific autoantibodies that target and destroy the joints, correct?
Exactly. These are the signature weapons of joint destruction.
And the researchers in this microbiology spectrum study didn't just look for these weapons in the blood. They tested the vaginal fluid itself.
And they found them.
Which is crazy.
Both ACPA and RF were detected directly in the vaginal fluid of the patients with RA. Finding those signature weapons present in a completely different organ system is a startling discovery.
I mean, yeah.
But the data gives us a really crucial piece of evidence to understand how they actually got there. The researchers compared the blood serum levels of these autoantibodies with the levels found in the vaginal fluid of the exact same patients. They did not perfectly correlate.
Ooh. Meaning a high level of ACPA in a patient's blood didn't guarantee a high level in their vaginal fluid, and vice versa.
Right.
So the vaginal tract isn't just like a passive sponge catching spillover from the systemic disease in the blood.
No, not at all. This discordance strongly implies that the vaginal mucosa likely has its own independent mechanism for producing these RA autoantibodies.
So the local tissue is acting as a manufacturing plant.
Yes. And the researchers found a very specific microbial link to this production. The levels of vaginal ACPA positively correlated with the presence of Streptococcus bacteria in the vagina.
Wait, so how does a common bacteria like Streptococcus trick the human body into manufacturing antibodies designed to destroy human joints?
It all comes down to a biochemical process called citrullinatation.
Citrullinatation.
Yeah. In RA, the immune system goes rogue because it starts attacking proteins in the body that have been chemically modified. Specifically, an amino acid called arginine gets converted into a different amino acid called citrulline.
Okay, tracking so far.
The immune system doesn't recognize this newly shaped citrullinated protein, so it creates ACPA antibodies to attack it.
But Streptococcus is just a bacteria. It doesn't have the biological tools to modify human proteins, does it?
Right, you're referring to PAE enzymes. An enzyme is a biological catalyst that speeds up chemical reactions, and PAED enzymes are the specific tools required to convert arginine into citrulline.
Right.
And you are correct that Streptococcus bacteria do not naturally possess PAD enzymes.
But those confused neutrophils, the white blood cells we talked about that are blowing up the bridge, they do have P8 enzymes, don't they?
They do. Human neutrophils are packed with PAD enzymes.
Oh, wow. I see where this is going.
Yeah. When Streptococcus invades this leaky, inflamed mucosal barrier, the neutrophils rush in and attack it. And in the chaos of this dysbiotic environment, the neutrophils rupture.
They just pop.
Yeah, and they spill their PAD enzymes everywhere. Those human enzymes end up chemically modifying or citrullinating the invading Streptococcus bacteria.
Ah, so the bacteria gets chemically painted by our own immune system.
Exactly. The immune system suddenly sees this citrullinated bacteria and creates ACPA antibodies to destroy it. But because the immune system has now been trained to hunt down anything with that citrullinated chemical signature, it eventually travels through the bloodstream, finds citrullinated proteins naturally occurring in the cartilage of the joints, and attacks them too.
That is just, wow.
The local skirmish at the mucosal border just triggered systemic joint destruction.
That is an incredible sequence of events. Just mind-blowing. But, this microscopic battle isn't happening in a vacuum.
No, definitely not.
It has to be influenced by what the patient is actually experiencing in real life. Their age, their diet, and ironically, the very medications they take to treat their RA.
Oh, absolutely. The real-world variables are huge here.
So let's look at menopause first.
Okay, so menopause is a massive systemic shift, mostly defined by a drop in estrogen.
Right.
Now, estrogen is critical for vaginal health because it acts as the signal that tells the vaginal epithelial cells to produce and shed that glycogen we mentioned earlier.
Which is the primary food source for the good lactobacillus.
Exactly.
So estrogen drops, glycogen drops, the good bacteria starve, and the protective lactic acid shield just disappears.
Yeah, and this physiological shift makes postmenopausal women generally more susceptible to inflammatory vaginitis anyway.
Even without RA.
Right. But when you layer rheumatoid arthritis on top of that, the inflammatory response becomes highly amplified.
Just a perfect storm.
The study found that specific inflammatory markers spiked uniquely in postmenopausal RA patients compared to postmenopausal healthy controls. The RA essentially weaponizes the menopausal transition, making that tissue exponentially more inflamed.
Jeez. And then there's the diet factor. The researchers looked at women who ate a reduced fat and reduced meat diet.
Right.
Now, usually we think of that as a universally healthy anti-inflammatory choice, right? Like the American College of Rheumatology even recommends avoiding high-fat diets.
They do. But the mucosal environment is incredibly complex, and systemic rules just don't always apply locally.
Okay, so what happened?
Well, instead of listing a bunch of complex acronyms, let's just look at the functional result. The study found elevated levels of specific cytokines like interleukin-1 alpha in these patients.
And what does interleukin-1 alpha do?
Think of it as a primary frontline alarm bell for tissue inflammation. When postmenopausal RA patients ate a reduced fat and meat diet, their baseline inflammatory alarm in the vaginal tract was actually louder than in healthy controls eating the exact same diet.
That is wild. It just highlights how dietary metabolites interact directly with mucosal immunity. Like, what works to calm inflammation in the whole body might have highly specific localized side effects on the vaginal ecosystem.
Exactly.
But maybe the most surprising variable in the whole study was the impact of the RA medications themselves.
Yeah, this part is really crucial. So disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drugs, or DMARDs, are the frontline defense against joint destruction in RMA. They are very powerful systemic immunosuppressants. The study looked at methotrexate, which is one of the most commonly prescribed drugs for this condition.
Very common.
And they found that the dosage of methotrexate inversely correlated with the healthy lactobacillus species.
Meaning, the higher the dose of the drug, the lower the population good bacteria.
Precisely.
But how does a drug designed to calm the immune system end up starving the good bacteria in the vaginal tract?
Well, methotrexate works by interfering with folate metabolism, which effectively slows down rapidly dividing cells.
Okay.
That's great for stopping the overactive immune cells that are attacking the joint. But the vaginal lining relies on rapid cell turnover to constantly shed that glycogen to feed the good bacteria.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. By slowing down that cellular turnover, the drug inadvertently starves the healthy lactobacillus.
Wow.
Furthermore, another common RA drug, sulfasalazine, was actually linked to a higher abundance of a bacteria called Lactobacillus infamers.
See, here's where it gets really interesting. We take these powerful medications to suppress joint destruction, but they're inadvertently promoting a hostile environment down there. And you mentioned Lactobacillus infaners. It has lactobacillus in the name, so it sounds like a good guy.
It does, but it's considered a non-optimal species. It's essentially a double
A
agent.
double agent.
Yeah, it doesn't produce the highly protective D-lactic acid that the other species do, and it actually secretes a toxin that can break down human cells.
Oh, wow.
So the very medications used to treat the systemic disease are fundamentally altering the local mucosal environment, potentially making it much more dysbiotic.
Which raises an important question about how we approach autoimmune care as a whole. I mean, we have historically treated the symptom, right? The painful joint.
Right.
But we do that without respecting the origins of the disease or the collateral damage happening in the mucosal tissues.
This raises an important question for doctors today.
Yeah.
Treating RA requires managing the entire ecosystem. A rheumatologist shouldn't just be looking at x-rays of hands and knees, They really need to be coordinating with gynecologists.
It has to be integrated.
Exactly. Monitoring vaginal health needs to become a standard part of RA care. If a patient has a leaky, inflamed mucosal barrier driven by a lack of estrogen and dysbiotic bacteria, we have to address that right at the source.
So that might mean prescribing localized treatments, like, say, topical estrogen to stimulate glycogen production, or targeted moisturizers to help physically rebuild that epithelial barrier.
Yes.
Because if the vaginal mucosa really is a manufacturing plant for these autoantibodies, then curing the joint might actually require managing the mucosa.
It's like if you put out the fire in the living room but ignore the faulty wiring in the basement, the house is still going to burn down eventually.
Great analogy.
We have to stop looking at the body as isolated parts and really understand the continuous chemical conversation happening between our borders and our joints.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If you are a learner trying to map out the future of medicine, this deep dive tells you that the borders of disease are constantly shifting. Rheumatoid arthritis isn't just a joint disease. It fundamentally alters the microbial and immune landscape of the vaginal microenvironment. It changes the bacteria, it dissolves the physical tight junctions of the tissue, and it turns a localized immune response into a massive systemic autoimmune trigger.
It really forces us to view the human body as a deeply interconnected ecosystem, like an ecosystem where the bacterial balance in the reproductive tract can literally dictate the fate of the cartilage in your knee.
It's just a reminder of the incredible, sometimes terrifying complexity of our own biology. Which brings us to one final, really provocative thought to leave you with today.
Let's hear it.
We've explored how this mucosal inflammation creates the autoantibodies that eventually travel through the blood to attack the joints. But if specific bacteria, like our citrullonated streptococcus, are driving this local production of weapons, could the future of preventing rheumatoid arthritis look completely different?
I mean, it changes everything about how we view the timeline and the intervention points of the disease.
Exactly. Could it involve skipping the heavy immune suppressants altogether and instead prescribing a customized prophylactic vaginal probiotic before a single joint ever begins to ache?
It's a whole new frontier.
Imagine stopping arthritis, not with a specialized immune drug that slows down cell turnover all over your body, but by simply restoring the bacterial peacekeepers at the border before the first shot is ever fired.
That is a powerful thought.
Next time you see an x-ray of a broken bone, appreciate the clean, binary simplicity of it. Because in the world of autoimmunity, the real picture is microscopic, it's highly systemic, and it's happening at borders you never even knew were under attack. Thanks for taking the plunge with us.